Hello Booktube. This is the Booktube Top 10s tag. It was originally created by Chapter and Verse, and I was tagged by Steve Donahue. It's a beautiful Sunday here in Vermont, so as soon as I'm done filming this, I'll be going outside and enjoying the day. As Steve said in the introduction to his video, this is a bit of a challenge, this tag. He made a point that it wasn't intended to be a list of the most impressive books you've read or the most famous or what would be on a syllabus in a class. This is the books that you can't live without, that you want to be on your shelf. And it's tough. I went through my shelves a couple times. I made piles of books a couple times, and I tried to really do what the tag intended. And I had to keep second guessing myself. Well, why are you picking that book? Is it really true that that would be to fit the criteria? And every time I'd go back and forth and bypass something, it was tough. Limiting the list to 10 was difficult. That's why I don't have only 10 books in my house. But I did manage to come up with a list, a selection, and I think it's a good one. I don't know if 5 years from now I sat down and did this again, how close it would be, but a lot of these books have been with me for a long time. So I think it might be pretty close. And some of the things I left off, like Patrick O'Brien's Aubrey Maturin series I'm reading now. So it doesn't have that place yet, and it probably will. And that's the joy of reading. Things change. But some things, at different times in your life, were the right things. So I'm going to go through a list. Let me show you the books I picked. Probably say a brief thing about each of them. I don't want this going on forever. So, top 10. So the first one here, and they're the top 10, but I'm not putting them in a top 10 order. It's just these are the top 10. Is Admiral Hornblower in the West Indies by C.S. Forster. And I fell in love with these volumes when I was a young fella. And it follows the life and career of Horatio Hornblower in Royal Navy during the Napoleonic era. This one was published in '57. And my copy here is 1958. It's an American edition. I absolutely loved these stories, and I've started collecting on Folio Society, starting to put them out. I've gotten the first 3, so that would be one of them. The next is Kenneth Roberts, Rabble in Arms. This would have come out. Well, here's the end papers. It's a map. This is the general area of the world I live in. So, and I've lived all around this area. It's French and Indian War, Revolutionary War, those type. That's sort of the time period this historical novelist worked in. When did this come out? 1933, and my edition here is a book club edition, so you can't really use the dates very well. But the last date on there is 47. It tells you how old it is. It's dedicated to Booth Tarkington, for those of you who remember him. So this is the story of the Northern Army, from Sullivan and Arnold's disastrous retreat from Quebec to the building of the first American Navy on Lake Champlain, and the overwhelming defeat of Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne at Saratoga. So any of his novels I absolutely loved. He was a great historical novelist, and Library of America should bring out his works, and all of his works, I think. So, Kenneth Roberts. The next one here, I read when I first read this when I was probably in my early 20s, so it's been a while. Let's see when it came out. It came out, this is a Simon Schuster, translated from the Greek by P.A. Bien. It came out in 1965, but this is a second printing. And this is NIKOS KAZANTZAKIS, Report to GRECO. and it's a sort of an experimental style autobiography. And he was a fascinating man. He was from Crete. Many of you remember him from either Zorba the Greek, which was a wonderful movie, and Last Temptation of Christ, which, at least in my opinion, was not. And he was a fascinating figure of 20th century literature. And this is a book I actually return to every now and then. I just very, very much enjoy it. I enjoy some of his other stuff too. So, a couple of them I don't, but Freedom or Death is a novel he did that's wonderful. And then, let me see here. I'll just do this one next. This is Hermann Hesse, Narcissus and Goldman. I read it at the right time in my life. Absolutely, absolutely love it. This one's translated by Ursul Molinaro. This is Farrar, Straus and Giroux, New York, and this came out in '68. Originally published, I guess, here in 1930. It's got a medieval setting. It's about the artistic temperament. It's just it's hard to put into words. But the imagery, the story, my favorite of the Hesse novels, and I love his work and treasure this one very much. I loved Magister Ludi and the Glass Bead Game. That was also very good. The next thing I have, these are comic novels. And they're not meant to be politically correct because they're making a point about empire, imperialism, and all that. And these are the stories of Harry Flashman, and I just grabbed one of them, Flashman and the Great Game. These are great novels, funny, adventurous. George MacDonald Fraser. This particular one I have, 1975, first American edition. These are fantastic books, and they're just hilarious. Good, fun, rip-roaring adventure. The next thing I have, you'll notice there's a brief edit there, because when I went to talk about this next book, Alexa just fired off and says, "I don't know that one." Well, hopefully, I don't know. I don't even know what to say. I live in a science fiction world. The next one is a book about books. It's called The Gentle Madness, Bibliophiles, Bibliomanes, and the Eternal Passion for Books by Nicholas A. Basmanes. Not only is it a beautiful book, it's, if you love the history of books and the wonkiness of the world of books, this is incredible. And get a print copy. This, yeah, it's just an amazing story about book collecting. It's, for people who love books, I can't imagine not having this book. Highly, highly recommend it. Couldn't live without it. The next one actually impacted what I did for undergraduate work. My undergraduate degree is in archaeology. And this book competed with Testaments of Time for which one I would choose by Leo Duell. I ended up picking this one because it probably had the biggest impact as much as I love the other. And that's C.W. Sarum, Gods, Graves, and Scholars. I have an old copy here without a dust jacket. And New York, Alfred A. Knopf, 1954. So a lot of the information in this is somewhat, it's still a great read about the adventurous days of archaeology. I know that they have a new, in the Yale series, I forget what it's called, of books. Brian Fagan has a story of the history of archaeology that I'm looking forward to reading because Brian Fagan's a magnificent writer about archaeology. But for when I came up, this volume was just captured my imagination. It was just, and I still love it. I would not have a library without this volume. And then next, let me grab these here. This thing here, Louis L'Amour. Always loved Louis L'Amour. When I need comfort, he's my comfort. when I just need to read a book and just sit down and just go away to another land or another time. I always find him congenial company. You hear the description of him as a guy you could sit around a campfire and swap stories with, and I think that's true. And this is among my favorite books, and it's my favorite by him. And it's The Walking Drum, and it's not about the American West and frontier days. This one's about medieval Europe around AD 1176. Rollicking adventure story. Absolutely wonderful. I know Todd the Librarian just finished reading it, and a few other people on Booktuber have mentioned it also. And this would be, I have to have Louis L'Amour on that shelf. That shelf of 10 books. And this is the one of his I've picked. But I love the Sackett novels. I really enjoy his stuff. So, comfortable reading. And then I'm going to finish up two that when I was a young man had a huge impact on me and my generation. Two that I go back to. I don't read them every year. I probably should. Wouldn't be a bad habit to get into. And both have depth to them. Now the first one has, you can't really call them sequels or prequels or any of that. They're all related in a way. And the other parts of this author's work I love just as much. But when I first read them in the early 70s, I was given to them, I was in my teen years, pretty young, and I was given them by a college student, a friend of the family. And he gave me all four of them. And I read them in order, or the order as I understood it, and it was The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. And it just blew me away. I read them over the summer, that and Lord of the Rings, and then found old paperback copies of Farmer Giles' Hand. I just went crazy. We didn't have all the stuff that Christopher Tolkien's put out since, but this book had a huge impact. I loved it. Still do. Maybe I will start reading it every year. Then the next book also had a lot of sequels, some of which I really enjoyed, but it was the book itself, and just like with The Hobbit, and at a similar time. This would have been in the 1970s. When did this come out? Well, this paperback's probably older than that. This came out in 65, so that looks like when this Ace paperback came out. And that is Dune by Frank Herbert. And again, I read the sequels, did all that, but this took me away. I had read Asimov's Foundation. I was a big fan of Heinlein and Clarke, but this book to me was the best of its type. The language, the structure of the whole thing. So I really, really loved it. Still do. And this one's one I probably should read every year or every couple of years. And it's been 2 or 3 years, I think, since I read it. I can't remember for sure. But that is my 10. I don't know if I can do a Steve Donahue stack or if it even would make much sense in this case, but I'll give it a shot. This is a very, very fun tag to do, but I'm going to go outside and play. There's sunshine, and we don't let that escape here in Vermont, because it doesn't happen very often. That's not true, it happens, but you got to take advantage of the summer while you have it. So here is the 10 books I chose, and I want to thank you, and I hope you're all having a wonderful weekend. Bye, Booktuber.